again on Yonkers Voice, and today it's a guest that I love, a guest that I care, and it's a personal friend of mine. I'm actually spending the weekend with her. We had a great time, we enjoyed it, and we saw things that you normally don't see in Yonkers. You know, Yonkers is beautiful, but there is other places around Yonkers that are equally beautiful. Angie, thank you for taking the time. Thank you always for talking to us. Say hello and let's go to what we need to talk about today.
Okay, well, hello everyone, and happy Sunday. It's a pleasure to have you and your wife here at my place in upstate New York, and you know, it's always a thrill to have people who've never been here to come. So I'll talk a little bit quickly about, you know, even though I had to move away from Yonkers a few years ago because I retired, but I'm still involved. I still have my Yonkers Historic History group on Facebook. It's got what, 11,000 some odd people on it, and I still am the only admin. And so people ask me to come down at different times to give different presentations on Yonkers history. Because as I've always said, Yonkers has a history unlike almost any other city in the whole country. And so I was asked by the office, New York State Office of Historic Preservation, particularly the people who are now in the...
Angie, before we go there, guys, Angie's here to have a, you know, so we can have a dynamic and organic conversation, but also very important about the event that it's coming up,
right.
The event that she's going to talk about it. So get a piece of paper, get your calendars open, okay, so you can mark that down and take advantage and learn something that is going on in our area. So go ahead, Angie, tell us.
Okay, so again, the individuals who are at the Old Croton or Aqueduct Historic Site, who used to be at Phillips Manor Hall, and the state moved them up there, which is actually good for them, it's closer to their home. They asked me if I would give a lecture, a presentation about the history of the Alexander Smith and Sons Carpet Company in Yonkers, that was in Yonkers from 1865 all the way till 1950, the early 50s, and at one time was the largest carpet company in the world. It's a phenomenal story, and I've told it a lot of times, and they asked me if I would do it again. So I said yes, of course I would volunteer to do that.
Now, Angie, before we go further, because I want to ask you a question here and there, where were they located in Yonkers? So people in Yonkers that can relate, say, okay, this is where this place used to be. Where in Yonkers were they located?
Well, a lot of the buildings are still there, Nepperhan Avenue and Sawmill River Road. You see all these big old, you know, factory-type buildings there. It's been designated an arts historic site. Lots of artists there, and you see these big, they're old mills essentially, and each building had a different purpose. So most of them are still there, built in the, you know, from the beginning was 1865 when the business moved there and grew and had more buildings and more buildings and more buildings, and most of them are still there. They've been repurposed, and you know, and it's similar to a lot of other mill towns, etc., that you see in New England, where there's these vast complexes, and they've all been repurposed for good things. So that's essentially, I'm going to talk about the history of the company, but it's an incredible story.
Now, this is the place where we had a big fire in Yonkers a few years back.
There's been a few, yeah, there's been a few, but not huge enough to destroy, you know, destroy the buildings. It just destroyed a part of it. I think it was actually in one of them that was an old kitchen or cafeteria or something.
Yeah, no, I'm asking that so people can pinpoint where the location is. The corner of Nepperhan and Lake, if I'm not mistaken. That is the building that we are talking about, correct?
Well, there's multiple buildings. They're along Nepperhan Avenue, they're along Sawmill River Road. They do come down, you know, Ashburton and head over further on, and again, each building had a different purpose. And so, you know, as the plant grew, it needed more different kinds of resources. So I won't give away the presentation, but,
exactly.
But that's essentially how it grew up. And then the railroad actually went there at one point, so they had the ability to you know, deliver the carpeting from there.
Yeah, we don't want to give up away the presentation, but we want to create enough interest, curiosity, because listen, Yonkers is a city full of history. There is many people who've been living in Yonkers for generations and generations. For years, like 40, 50, 60, 70 years. I live in Yonkers for 40. Angelique lived in Yonkers for 40 years. She knows everything there is to know in regards to historic value, history of Yonkers. I don't. And there is lots of things that I have learned by listening to Angelique. So Angelique is full of good stuff, full of stuff that you should learn. I would suggest you get to know, learn, participate in events and presentations like the one that is coming up to learn about the history of your city. Now, when is this happening?
So the date that they selected was October 19th. It is at 1 p.m. at the Irvington Public Library. Now, some people would say, why the Irvington Public Library? But that's the venue that they had available to do it, and it's close enough to Yonkers. And again, this is being orchestrated by the Old Croton Aqueduct historic site, which actually runs from New York City all the way up, I don't know, 40, 50 miles. So their idea was, let's talk about the history along the aqueduct and any kind of historic things that people should know about. So, and the aqueduct is, you know, public space that you can walk and do all kinds of stuff. So they selected that space, I think, sort of to, they could accommodate the presentation. There's only 45 seats available, and I know we're pretty close to the edge. So if you have any interest in spending an hour listening and seeing pictures, and, you know, there was a point in time when a third of the workforce of Yonkers worked at the factory. So if your family's been in Yonkers for a long time, chances are good somebody in the family is connected to it. And there's such great, you know, stories that come from it.
Angie, there is somebody who's watching saying, Lila Roscona, I live in Angelique's old house in Yonkers. So you want to say
hi,
hello?
Layla.
There you go. Hector Santiago, that's my man.
Hey, Hector.
Love is love, Hector. Hector says, sending lots of love to Angelique Piwinski.
What a
Awesome and extremely knowledgeable about Yonkers.
Not to mention, I talk a lot of...
Hector, when you're right, brother, you are right. What else, you know, Angelique? Now, how can people actually inquire about tickets?
Okay, it's very simple. It's aqueduct.org, right? Aqueduct.org is the website. It's the Friends website. Doesn't matter what it is. Just go on to aqueduct.org and scroll down the page. You'll see events, and you'll see a picture, a 1900s picture of the factory. There's a button there that click to register. You can't just show up. You've got to be registered. It's free. It won't cost you anything. And again, it's you know, only register if you can make it, because you'll be taking a seat away from somebody else. But I've given this presentation. I never give the same one exactly twice. So if you've heard it before, chances are good you're going to learn something new each time. And I'm thrilled to do it because I always, you know, even though I'm not in Yonkers anymore, there's so much history that should be learned because it's great. It's a great, you know, history is, the word history has the word story in it. And so it has a story that's unlike almost anything else. And it's so many different parts. You'll be amazed at how much you'll get out of it, I think.
Angelique, you're not in Yonkers physically, but your mind and heart is always in Yonkers, no?
Well, it's hard not to live in a, you know, I lived there for 41 years. It's hard not to. And, you know, it's, even though I actually was born in Brooklyn, but when I moved to Yonkers, there was a fascination with the city that caught me. And so I started collecting Yonkers history items, and I started researching. And that was, you know, 40 years worth of stuff. And sometimes I come upon something I've gotten, I'm like, wait a minute, that's just really cool. And you make the connection. I mean, that's what historians do. You follow the story until the story starts leading you another place, and you realize it's pretty neat, you know?
Guys, this is the type of stuff that I love to do. Yonkers Voice pays attention to what matters to you. We give you information that perhaps you didn't have. We give you news that chances are you wouldn't get else, from a different channel. We give you the news raw and real. You see what we see, and you formulate your opinion based on what you see, not on what we write. We have no interest in generating a particular outcome, a particular opinion. We give you exactly how we see it. Information that we give you is information that we have at the moment. When you broadcast live interviews like this that are unscripted, we don't know what we're going to do, ask next. We don't know what's going to lead to the next question. When you broadcast a live report, we cannot ask questions and get all the facts before we go live. I wish I could.
Yeah, well, I think your methodology is basically, let's talk about this event and give some reason why people should show up and what they can learn. I mean, I've always said that, history is one of those things that humanity is flawed. And if we don't study history, we'll make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And so sometimes they'll skip a generation or 2 generations. But if you understand the underpinnings of why something happened, what happened to it, why it happened, you'll realize that this will give you a guide for the future, because it's about people. History's about people.
So I always give this little script when I do interviews in the hopes that I will not educate, that might be the wrong word, but inform people that our news is raw. We don't have a particular format. We react as it goes, and we give you as we learn. Now, don't forget, guys, if you want to support Yonkers Voice, send us some stars. Ask your friends and families to do the same. But stars is not the only way to support Yonkers Voice. You can support us, and we thank you as well, if you just refer us to your friends and family. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Don't forget, when you join those platforms, subscribe and turn the notifications on, because sometimes Facebook has flaws and they have bugs, and the notification gets unchecked without you actually knowing. So if you are not getting the notification, make sure you go to our profile, turn it off and turn it back on. Now, Angelique, people say, I'm living in Yonkers, too much of this, too much of that, I'm tired, I'm looking for a better place, more peaceful way. Yonkers is also full of good stuff. Yonkers is full of good people. Yonkers is full of good talent. And there is no one better than you to speak about the history of Yonkers and the things that makes us residents of Yonkers, or should make us proud. Okay? We don't want to talk too much, because I want to leave something for our next interview. But in general, tell us a few things about that. Why should I be proud of Yonkers?
Well, I mean, in general, I think, people see Yonkers, third largest city in New York State, too big, but when you get involved in things, as I was, all of a sudden you realize there's a circle of people, it could be a big circle, a couple hundred people, that you get to know really well, who are there volunteering good stuff for the community. And, some people say, oh, the good old days, with this and that, well, if you study history, one of my favorite stories is that in the year 1900, someone stole 3 houses. Now, they didn't steal the contents of the house, they stole the whole house. So the guy got back and he goes, where's my houses? They're gone. Wood, everything. I guess somebody stole them to burn them in a fireplace or something. But, the good old days weren't always the good old days. And it's based on your own experience. So if you grew up in a good middle class, maybe an upper class household, you had a good experience. But not everybody did back in the day.
So in the back old days, they didn't just steal the content; they stole the whole house.
Well, that was one story I couldn't believe. Like it was in the New York Times. That it was hysterical.
When did that happen?
1900.
1900.
120 years ago. Most everybody was dead by now. But that's how you study history, and you realize that, yeah, they were good, but not always that good.
Correct. Now, just let me give a shout out to Thomas John. Thomas, thank you very much. 500 stars. We appreciate it. Thank you. Guys, that's what we're talking about. help us out. You know, the things that we do, you know, believe it or not, there is some resources that has to be used, replacing equipment, broken equipment, upgrading equipment, gas to go and interview people. Not this case, because I came to have fun with Angelique. And Angelique, can I say you paid for the gas?
I didn't pay for the gas.
I was just trying. She didn't pay for the gas.
Well, I invited you and your wife to come up here because you are constantly awake and going and going. And, you know, to 2 in the morning, I get, you know, Yonkers Voices Live. I'm like, what's going on now, you know? And it's always nice to take a break and come to a very, I mean, I live in rural upstate New York. It is quiet. It's a beautiful day here. We went to a local town for breakfast, you know, and went to a farm and, you know, and went to a flea market.
That's right.
Which you bought stuff.
That's right.
I didn't, but you did. And so it's stuff like that. You need, everybody needs a break from something, right? And so it's good to see you here in person, and your wife, of course.
But guess what? I'm here to relax, to have a good time, and what are we doing?
Well, you're working, I'm not. I'm drinking wine. Well.
Anyway, guys, I do this because I love to do it. I'm not a journalist. I never went to school for journalism. I just enjoy the things that I do. And if we go back in history to the good old times, many of those guys that reported the news back then never got a formal education in journalism or were journalists. They were just people that inform you, so you know what's happening in the area or the country that you live. Now, what else, Angelique, should I be proud of?
Well, look, you have there's almost in every square inch you've got history. You know, from the waterfront, from the older churches and other religious houses of worship. You got a seminary. Seminary was the site of the Valentine family who lived in Yonkers prior to the seminary. And George Washington would stay on that farm where the seminary is today. And it's when you read about history, like one of my favorite stories is in 1895, they were celebrating Washington's birthday. And they researched, and Washington actually said a prayer before the Battle of White Plains on the family farm, and it was recorded by the family. And I think, you know, stuff like that. And then the public school system actually did something to highlight that, invited essays or something. So when you see stuff like that, you realize that just because a place is a place today doesn't mean it was, you know, it doesn't have history. You know, you've got Phillips Manor Hall, the oldest standing building in the entirety of Westchester, 1682. You know, a huge, ancient, old, but with so much history. You've got St. John's Episcopal Church, the oldest stone Episcopal church in the state of New York, still operating, still functioning. Its charter came from William and Mary of England back in 1693. You know, so when you see stuff like that, it's like, wow. You know, even if you go to Untermeyer, you know, the Untermeyer Park, a multi-million-dollar lawyer who built this beautiful Persian garden. That's, you know, the group there that's restoring it has done a spectacular job. You know, you almost go any place and you look at it and you realize what was. And that's one of the reasons I started my Historic Yonkers Facebook group, because I wanted people to pull stuff out of their attics that have been there a long time and post it, and then people could comment on it.
Now, the other day, the Columbus Day Parade, a week ago, okay, that I was passing on Seminar Avenue, just by the seminar, I saw this big, huge stone with some engravings. That's when I found out that George Washington actually stayed on that location.
That's the Valentine farm.
Yes, and I've been living in Yonkers for 40 years. I had no idea. Okay, and just like I had no idea, I know there is thousands of other people in Yonkers that have no idea. Yep. And we don't have no idea about that place and about many other places in Yonkers that has historic value too.
So much history is there, you know, and that's why, you know, when you start studying it, you realize one thing leads you to another, and all of a sudden, like, I never knew that. You know, I never knew that about anything. I mean, even City Hall, where it is now, they picked the location because it's the highest point in the area and has this commanding view. They used a style called Beaux Arts to to uplift the people who were living down in the, weren't exactly rich, or, were living in squalor. So to look at this beautiful edifice, it was meant to uplift. So each thing has a reason and a value, and sometimes it changes over time. But we have a lot to be proud of. The architecture, the buildings, the history. I can go on and on, but you get what I'm saying. And the carpet company is one example. Otis Elevator that was founded in Yonkers, another example. And then, you have the sugar factory. You have all of these things, long time in Yonkers, and, in some cases the businesses aren't there anymore. But some of their remains are still there, repurposed. So if you learn more, it's a good thing. It teaches you a lot.
That's the good stuff about Yonkers, but there is also some dark history connected to Yonkers. Prohibition time. I know that you know a few things. They used to bring the liquor underground from certain locations, and we have a huge group that they find curiosity in those things. Can you give us a little bit on that you might know of?
Well, you have to realize that when you prohibit people from doing something they've been doing for a long time, they're going to find a workaround. They've got to find some way of getting around this. Because I don't know about you, but if somebody told me I couldn't drink again, I think I'd probably I'd go somewhere else if I could. But sure, there were all kinds of ways that they brewed things, pretending to brew this and that, but meanwhile had stills in other places. It's the history's long and deep on that one. But ultimately, some smarter people prevailed, and we don't have that anymore. Although there are some towns in the country that are still what they call dry towns, where they do not sell liquor, in any kind of restaurants or whatever, and somehow they do okay. It's you live in a place that's good for you. So,
but do you know of any homeland locations in Yonkers where it's known that we're connected to the Prohibition time, where liquor? I know that there was a Zoop in the basement, and the owner actually showed me down the basement. And it was a curiosity, I said, wow, I believe that is a place also on South Broadway. Do you know of the...
Well, I remember exactly where these buildings were, and some of them are not there anymore. But the way they did it was they did use the sewer system and ran piping under it that had the transmission lines for the beer and whatever else they were making that would go someplace, and then they would ship it down the river or wherever they were. So, that's almost a story like Dutch Schultz and all these guys. Yes. You can Google that, and it's fascinating.
So maybe we should suggest and put some of those beer lines to the building that I sign up for that.
Me too. Not beer, but wine. I take wine.
Okay, so what about beer and wine?
Yeah, all right, that's fair. 2 lines.
And the camera person said vodka. So what about a whole bunch of liquor line?
There you go. Although I think it might be easier just to go to a restaurant and order it
That's
instead of all that stuff.
That's it. Sponsor local businesses. Go to our local restaurants. Yonkers Brewery, great place to have a beer, chicken wings, pasta, or whatever. Listen to some music, make new friends. Dos Marias, 200 New Main Street. Also a great place for tacos. They have Taco Tuesday. I have to plug them in because those are friends of mine that they help me, they support me, and I strongly believe in a two-way street. You help me, I help you. Okay, so I'm always ready to help the community. And remember, we do this for you. We don't take sides. We don't care much about politics. We don't care much about harassing people, stalking people, upsetting people. We do this for you, so you can engage, you can ask questions, you can have fun, you can make new friends. We don't mind heated debates. It's welcome, but I feel that to have a debate, to have a challenge my point of view or your point of view, I don't need to disrespect you or disrespect anybody. We can have a conversation, make friends, and maintain our difference of opinions or how we see life. We don't all have to see it in the same way. Would you agree with that, Angie?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's really the point of it. And I'll just say one further thing. You know, when you support the local business, whether it's the Yonkers Brewery or Giovanni's Pizza or one of the other folks, you're not just supporting the business, but you're supporting all the ancillary pieces that come from the business, the delivery people, the charitable things that they all do. I mean, X2O, Peter Kelly does an immense array of charitable stuff, and that revenue gives them the ability to do that. And so it's not just the establishment, it's far beyond that. And so I think it's an important point, don't put your beer lines underground, just go to the brewery.
I agree with her. And guys, don't forget, actions, not words. If you love the city, if you love our city, show it with actions. Take care of your city. If you're walking your pet, pick up after your pet. If you have garbage in your hand, there is plenty garbage cans. Put the garbage in the garbage can. So show that you love by actions, not by words.
I agree. And also, I took Rui to we did an Oktoberfest in my little town here. There's 1,000 people, right? And literally, there was hundreds of people on the streets, right? And my point there is the people support the businesses who are there to come down, to see a little parade, to see whatever. Go to these events. Be out there. It's outside a lot of times. And while you're there, you go in and you support the business because you're hungry. You've been standing there a long time. You realize you forgot to stop in at the store. Everything has a good reason, and the more we support the local community, wherever it is, the better it becomes for everybody.
You heard it. Is there anything else that comes to your mind, Angie, that we want to bring it up, that we want to talk? Maybe something you want to tell us?
No,
recommendation you want to make?
All I want to do is say, if you're interested in this particular lecture presentation, there's lots of pictures, lots of stories that go with it. I'm going to talk for an hour. I'll leave time for Q&A. But go to aqueduct.org. Scroll down. You'll see the Alexander Smith & Sons photograph of the 1900 plant. Go and hit register. It's free. And again, there's only 45 spaces available. And so once it's booked, it's booked. So I would encourage you, if you have the time, I know it's a weekday, I know it's lunchtime, but do it, because otherwise you'll have to wait till the next time that I do it. And I do want to do it for the Hudson River Museum, which is also located in Yonkers, where I'm still on the board of trustees, even though I don't live there anymore. So, it's different ways of supporting the community, and I don't have the money to spend, to give them tons of money, but I can give back in kind, where, anything you do to promote history, museums and stuff is a good thing. So
what day is it?
It's October 19th at 1 o'clock at the Irvington Public Library. I mean, it's only a little ways up from Yonkers. Aqueduct.org will give you all the information on the history speech talk. That's all you got to do, and then come.
So guys, go to that site now. Don't wait until the 17th. Go to the site now, register.
Well, the 19th.
The 19th?
Yeah,
the 19th, my apologies. Go to the site now, today, right after this, and register. And don't forget, guys, please ask your friends, your family members to follow Yonkers Voice. Follow and turn the notifications on so you get notified when we go live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Now, what about, now that you mentioned the museum, you know that I've been in Yonkers for 40 years. I have never been at the museum. I think it's time.
I think it's time as well. I mean, the Hudson River Museum has been around since, I think, 1919. Been a long time. There's a beautiful old mansion that's connected to the property that they just did an expansion of the museum. There's tens of thousands of items, and there's a constant series of exhibitions and on different topics. And I like the idea that the mission is that anyone who walks through those doors will see something that they identify with, something that is will, you know, be a part of them. It's not, it's, so there's a lot of different things. There's an exhibition coming up on the Bierstadt brothers, right, who were 1800s photographers and painters. They painted locally and other places and took pictures. And I realized in my own collection I had one of them, or an original. It was actually of Phillips Manor Hall, taken in 1887. And it's, you know, I had it framed on my wall for years, and I was like, oh, I know the name is relatively famous, but I never had a chance to research it, and I realized my picture would be hanging in that exhibition as well. So you learn things when you connect to museums. You know, they're not just dusty places where you see old furniture. There's stories behind everything. Just like when we went down to the local town here and did the medical museum, a Victorian medical museum, that everything in the house was owned by the doctors who worked there and lived there. So, and that's on your YouTube as well. So there's stuff like that you learn when you go to museums, and you see yourself, which I do. So
guys, before you go away, or better yet, as soon as we conclude this, check the video that we dropped yesterday of our visit to Dr. Best Medical Museum, which is a home that was built in the 1800s, and only one family lived there, Dr. Best's family. In that house, some of his kids died. I believe his son, oldest son, who was also a doctor, died there. And it's a house with a history, documented history of paranormal activity. Also, medical curiosities that it's just unbelievable. Check it out. And if you are in the Middleburgh area, make sure you go and see the museum. You will be amazed, and you will see the past. You can compare it to the present, and you can actually connect both, because the things that you see there are not duplicates. They are original stuff that were used by Dr. Best and his family. The clothing that you see there were worn by their kids when they were little. Actually, I saw the suit of the little boy that died there when he was 7. That was his clothes. You see his toys. And some people say that they have seen him or his presence in that house. They hear music playing in the piano that the wife or the daughter used to play. So there is lots of things that happen in that house. The house is full of energy. I recommend.
Yeah, definitely. It's unfortunate because we tried to do it live.
Oh, that's right.
And tried twice
to do it live.
And this is a home that has, wired internet, and
full strength,
and you got into about a minute, and it just knocked it right off.
And not right off at exactly the same spot.
Yeah. So, I'm not necessarily a big believer in ghosts and all that stuff.
I am.
But you are. And, case in point, like, it should have worked perfectly. It shouldn't have been. And Debbie, who's the director of the museum, did a marvelous job of walking through and explaining what the different things are. Even this machine that was created in 1902, there's only 2 in the country, and this one works. Supposedly, you put this electronic thing on your head, and it eliminates brain fog and all kinds of other wacky things, that were big in the day, still are actually. Brain fog is a thing. Sometimes I have it. but she guides you through everything, explains everything, and you ask some great questions. It's like 50 minutes long, but it's really worth it.
Really worth it.
And if you could see it in person, Middleburgh is about an hour from Albany, New York, the capital. It's easy to find. It's in the Schoharie Valley, which is a beautiful. And we're at peak right now. All the foliages are magnificent. I know downstate is still coming up, but it's worth a drive. You make an appointment. You explain it on the video how to do it. It's not just open. You have to make an appointment, and you get a personal guided tour.
Exactly. So, guys, don't forget how you find the place. Dr. Best, Best, Middleburgh. Do a Google search. You will find all the information that you need to set up an appointment. Look, I could show you a picture of a
Hamburger?
Hamburger. I was going to say a hamburger.
Wait a minute, what's that got to do with what we're talking about?
No, I'm going to show you the connection.
Oh.
I could show you a picture of a hamburger, juicy, and tell you it tastes awesome. But unless you taste it, you don't know. I can show you that video, which is great video. You see all the things that I saw, but nothing like coming and experiencing that by yourself. That's the connection.
Well, that's the reality. It's you walk into a place, no matter where it is, whatever, historic site, and you're touching things that people 100 some odd years ago touched or sat in or experienced, or windows they looked through, you know, and so there's nothing like being right there. And if we were on the other side of the world, I get that, but it's close enough to people in Yonkers or, you know, anywhere really in the state. It's not a tough drive. It's a beautiful drive. And so those are the kind of things, you know, experience all the things in Yonkers. There's all kinds of galleries and, you know, historic places, and experience what's also around us. You know, the river towns are beautiful. There's so much here. We're really lucky to live
Correct.
where we are.
And guys, if you decide to come, don't come alone. Bring your family. Bring a group of people. Okay? Take a trip. You know, get into a bus all together. Let's go and check the Dr. Best Museum in Middleburgh, New York. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sitting with me, Angie.
Thank you so much.
It's
always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to see you. We always have interesting conversation, and I always bring the people of Yonkers with me. They see what I see. They experience what I experience up to a certain point. There are certain things that you have to do it yourself in order to experience. Thank you very much. Until next time.